All right, so we're going to look at this picture again of the 12 links. So the first link is ignorance. So the blind man walking with a stick. So ignorance, there's three types of ignorance, three categories of ignorance. So the first level of ignorance is not believing in rebirth, not believing in karma, and not believing in refuge. So that's the first level of ignorance. And then the second level of ignorance is not is believing in a self-sufficient, substantially existent I or dominant I. So that sense of I that is more important is part of the mind, but is more important. So often, like a captain in a boat is also a sailor. So he's a sailor, but he's more important than the other sailor. So this sense of I, this body belongs to me. These are my thoughts. This is what I think. So where is this I? You see, that's more important than the body mind. He's part of the body and mind, but more important. So this sense of I is innate. So all living, even the insects have it, even the animals and all human beings have this innate sense of I. And with it comes, if we identify strongly with this sense of I, then things belong to me, it belongs to this I. So the dominant I is the possessor. This is my car. So when you say it's my car, the car doesn't belong to your body or to your mind. It belongs to me. So where is the me to whom that car belongs to, right? Or you say, this is my house. Is it the house of my body or my mind or of me? No, it's my house. But where, you see, that sense of me, you have to feel it, to experience it, and then to keep it there, and then you look for it. No? Or you say, these are my children, this is my son, my daughter, So to whom does this child belong to? Right? So you check to the sense of I, right? So by doing so, if you're able to investigate and not find the I, so the child is still your child, but the attachment, you see that possessiveness, that attachment, that should decrease as a sign of success, right? So if you look at your car, it's still your car. You can prove it. You have the insurance and the things. It's still your car, but you don't have this attachment to your car, right? So that's a sign of success, of progress. So, for example, you go in a parking lot and you see the car of your neighbor scratched, by a key or something. So, oh yeah, the car is scratched. But when it's your car that is scratched, it's a completely different experience, right? Oh, my car. Oh. So, yeah. So there the object of refutation becomes very strong, the sense of I, mine. So it's a good opportunity to check, oh, how is the I there? No? Yeah, so that's the second level of ignorance. And the third level of ignorance is to believe in an inherent I. Right? So that's more subtle. That's the view of the I that is refuted in the Prasangika. And so it's the same I than the previous one, but you look it from a different perspective. So it's not like you have two I, that you have the dominant I and the inherent I, and then you have to refute both. It's the same I, but looked from a different perspective. right? So when you refute the dominant I, the body exists from its own side, the mind exists from its own side, everything exists objectively from its own side, the body mind. Just the I is more important than the body mind. Whereas in the Prasangika view, there's no body there, there's no mind there, and there's no I there. Right? So there's no body existing from his own side, there's no mind existing from his own side, and there's no I existing from his own side. The body is merely imputed by the mind is merely imputed by the mind, and the I is merely imputed by the mind. So it's much more airy, it's much more less things to hold on. You see, with the dominant I, so you don't find the I that is the possessor of the car, but the body is there and the mind is there from their own side. So you don't put into question the existence of the body and mind as being there. Whereas in the Prasangika, you don't accept that. There's no body there and no mind there and no I there. So is more refined, right? The analysis. Mhm. So based on this mistaken perception of self or mistaken perception of karma, not believing karma. So the second link is karmic formation. And karmic formation is a potter making different types of pots. Yeah, it's not one. This is a mentally created problem. It's not an innate problem. Right. So here in this ignorance, it only speaks about yeah, the two innate and because if you don't believe in karma and rebirth and so there's no path. Basically, if you don't have refuge, there's no path. Whereas the other one is an intellectually acquired wrong view. It's by adhering to a wrong philosophy, right? Yeah. But it's a good point because you have it in another description of, yeah. Yeah. So then you have karmic formation. So it's a potter that makes different size and different shape of pot, right? So this symbolizes that you create different type of karma, basically. So one uh, a link that is a bit missing. It goes from ignorance to karmic formation. So in between, you have the delusion that are created due to karma, right? So you have the mental affliction that makes you create this and that karma, right? So you create karma out of attachment, aversion, pride, jealousy, love, compassion. So basically, it was pushes your mind to act, right? So, so this action can be mental, can be through speech or through activities, right? So we act, and so what pushes us to act is some kind of emotion, right? Some kind of wish, kind of like that. And then these emotion and these action, they are put an imprint or a habit on the mind, right? The stream of consciousness. And that is symbolized by a monkey jumping around a tree. So, of course, because it's a static image, the monkey doesn't really jump. He's but he's in a position that shows that he's jumping around. Um, so that symbolizes the mind that constantly has different thought, emotion, things constantly changing in the mind, right? So, and one's attention goes from one object of attention to another, right? So this symbolizes the mind. So basically the imprint, out of ignorance, we act, and these imprints are stored in the mind, right? So these are called the projecting cause. So you have four categories. You have the projecting cause, and then you have the projected effect, and then you have the ripening cause and the ripening effect. So you have four categories of the 12 links. So the projecting cause are the time when you plant the seed, when you create the seed, right? So you create the seed of the karma that is imprinted on the mind, right? And then that seed remains there either until the end of your life, where you activate that seed, you nourish that seed uh, with craving, grasping, and becoming. So then you nourish the seed so that it becomes to the point where it actually can uh, bring about a rebirth. So having the seed, just having done the action, uh, out of ignorance and mental affliction, done the action and imprinted it on the consciousness, it's not powerful enough to bring about a rebirth. It needs to be further nourished by craving, grasping, and becoming. So when that karmic seed is further nourished by craving, grasping, and becoming, it becomes potent, fully potent. So when we die, so that imprint will bring about a rebirth, right? So the consciousness, so consciousness you can, did I say mind or consciousness? Doesn't matter. Both are okay. So the imprint are put on the consciousness, and the consciousness has two parts. There's the consciousness at the time of the action where you put the imprint, and then you have the action, the mind at the time of the result. So that imprint stays on that mind until the time of the effect, right? So here, the mind at the time of result gives birth, creates name and form. So name and form is symbolized by some people rowing a boat. So the boat is the name, is the form, and the people inside the boat are name. So basically, it symbolized our next rebirth, not next rebirth. It symbolized the mind and body of our next life, right? But not of the next life. It speaks about the potential for them for the next life. So they are not actual body and mind. They are imprints that have the potential to bring that about, right? So there's a number of explanation. I would, for the timing, I will follow that explanation. And then the name and form. So in another explanation, so it symbolized the consciousness entering to the sperm and ovum of the parents, right? So that's the mind of the intermediate state being entering to the sperm and ovum, and then the embryo growing. So the embryo would be the body, and the mind of the being would be the consciousness, the name and form. Right? Form would be the embryo, and the name would be the consciousness of the being that has entered uh, the embryo. And then sixth sense base. So you have a house with various doors and window. So these doors and window symbolize the six senses. So seeing the world as the embryo grows, so and the sense consciousness form. So the embryo starts feeling the mother and starts seeing, no, maybe not because the eyes are closed, but start hearing what's happening. So the sense organ form, and then the consciousness starts functioning and perceiving the outer world, right? Six sense base. And then, so once the six sense base are formed, then they enter into contact with object, right? Object of sight, sound, smell, taste, touch, and mental object. So the contact is uh, expressed by a couple being in union, a couple being in bed together. And then once contact is formed, when you have the consciousness enter into contact with an object, it produces feeling, or I prefer another word, sensation. So you have pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral sensation. So you these three types of sensation, and here sensation is shown by a person having an arrow in the eye, right? So it must be an unpleasant sensation. Contact, right? Yeah. And then contact produces feelings, right? Yeah, yeah, contact and then feeling or sensation. So sensation here seems to be a person drinking alcohol. Do you see that? Yeah. Okay, so we see the same thing. Yeah. So it must be a pleasurable sensation, let's say, having sensation. And then sensation, because if it's pleasant, so yeah, so pleasant, so sensation, you have pleasant and unpleasant. So here's a pleasant. And then so sensation produces craving, right? So craving, here we see, I think it's a monkey getting some fruit in a tree, right? So craving for a pleasurable experience, right? So you have a pleasure sensation, and then you want to repeat that, or you cultivate that, right? Craving. Uh, Contact, feeling, craving. You're right. You're right. Feeling was the arrow in the eye. Yeah. Yeah, you're right. Sensation, uh, contact, craving, grasping. Yeah. So grasping, wanting. Yeah. Grasping. Uh, Probably like an alcoholic that, you know, wants to drink more and more of the alcohol, craving, and then grasping, or sometimes called clinging. Tibetan children calls it clinging. Uh, Basically, it's an enhanced form of craving, grasping, so wanting more and more of the same thing. Yeah. And this turns into becoming. So becoming, I think, is a pregnant woman. Do you see that? Huh? Becoming, yeah. And then the next is birth. So I think it's a woman giving birth. I think one can see a small head coming out. Yeah, she's holding a tree. I don't, does that help? Yeah, I guess. Yeah. So that's, yeah, so birth, right? And then the next is, so birth is followed by old age and death, right? So here, I think is a guy uh, carrying a corpse on his back, you know. So the corpse is like bundled up in a white sheet, right? So that's actually, uh, language of picture, through picture you can get express things. So there's so many ways to meditate on the 12 links. So I'll just mention a few That makes sense to me, you know. So out of ignorance, mistaken perception of reality, right? So we created karma, but not just any karma. We created contaminated karma or contaminated action. So, for example, higher bodhisattva or Buddhas, they also create actions, but they create uncontaminated actions. So our actions are contaminated by a belief in self-existence, right? So any actions that are created under the influence of self-existence, they is called contaminated karma. And then you have contaminated virtuous action and contaminated non-virtuous action, right? So even though you have a mistaken perception of who you are and who others are, but if out of love and compassion you help someone, so that's a virtuous action, right? That will bring about a result of happiness. So that will bring about a result of pleasurable feelings, sensation, right? So the cause of virtuous um, action, virtuous contaminated action will bring about pleasurable feeling within psychic existence, right? So the Buddhas also have feelings, but they have uncontaminated feelings, right? So they have feelings that are not within the realms of seeing things as inherently existent. So they have only feelings of bliss because they have uncontaminated feelings. But we have you know, contaminated action of virtues and non-virtues. So that shows you, you see, if you really want to do a good action, that brings about freedom, you have to mix it with your understanding of emptiness, right? So more you understand emptiness and you mix it with whatever virtue you do, then you create the cause for uncontaminated feeling of happiness, right? Whereas all our virtuous action, generosity, love, compassion, if it's not mixed with emptiness, it's only produce more samsara, right? It brings happiness within cyclic existence, but it doesn't lead you beyond, right? So, for example, many of us do deity practice, right? So if you do deity practice without mix it with emptiness, you visualizing yourself as a deity, you create the goals for the God realms, right? It doesn't lead you beyond if it's not mixed with emptiness. So the liberating part is really the emptiness. So these karmic seeds are left on the consciousness until they are further activated to craving, grasping. So craving, grasping is like you basically you have to repeat that action again and again so that it becomes more and more powerful, right? So that's like watering the plant, watering the seed, and so it says craving is like watering the seed, and grasping is like the heat that brings the seed more, even more to fruition, right? And then when that is completely ripened, activated, then it turns into becoming. So becoming is the stage just before you die. So just before you die, that imprint is completely activated, nourished, and it has no more choice but to bring about that rebirth, right? So usually is the last thought or emotion we have before dying, right? So that's why one tries to help people to have the best possible state of mind while they die, so that they activate. You see, we have so countless karmic imprint, right? So which one is going to ripen at the time of death? right? So usually it says the most likely is if someone has done a great huge positive things in this life. For example, build a hospital or help somebody immensely or build a stupa or, you know, help the monastery or help a spiritual teacher or something like, something really important. So that big imprint at the time of death, that's what they would remember. Or if somebody has killed or cheated a lot or done really something heavy negative action, then at the time of death, that will come to his or her mind, right? So if one has done something huge, you know, heavy, positive or negative, that's what's most likely to come to our mind while we die. And that karma will be activated and will bring about this positive or negative rebirth, kind of like that. So it says if someone hasn't created a huge positive or huge negative, what is most likely is the state of mind you're more familiarized with. Your normal everyday state of mind. So some people are naturally loving, compassionate, peace, naturally they have this positive emotion. That's how they go through the day most days, without effort, right? And then other people, they're short-tempered and irritated, they get flared up by a very little trigger, it's their basic mood, kind of like that. And a positive one, those which think often to their guru or to the Buddhas or to the deity, which are very close to their object of refuge, right? So if that is the underlying current to their day or to their life, so that most likely when they die, they will remember, their guru or their deity or the Buddha, things like that. So that again would be, you know, a positive way of dying, right? So, and if one hasn't done a big thing and one hasn't a state of mind that is most familiarized with, so then basically it's at random, you don't have anything strong and you don't have something that you're very familiarized with. So basically, it's the last thought you have. Right. So then for that person it's essential that some people help him or her to have a positive state. That there's a positive state of mind that comes to the surface while they die, right? So now the feeling, right? So we have pleasant and unpleasant feelings or sensation. So this all the sensation that we experience is the ripening of a karma that we put on our stream of consciousness, right? So any experience of pleasure and pain we have, they say even the pleasure of a leaf falling and touching your skin, or even a small breeze, or an uncomfortable experience of drinking a tea that is too hot, and burning you. So all the sensation we have is the ripening of karma, right? There's no sensation that comes by chance or at random or that wasn't created by ourselves, right? So we created the cause to have Trump maybe as next president. We created the cause for global warming. We created the cause for the wars that we hear about. So there's no experience that we go through that wasn't created by our own karmic imprint ripening, right? So as a Buddhist, you cannot really blame the outside world, right? You can only blame your own karma. Basically, own imprint you created. So basically, it puts all the responsibility back to oneself. You cannot put the fault on other people. Why? Because all the sensation, all the experience is the ripening of one's own karma. If we hadn't created the cause, that experience could not have happened. And same thing, so if you want to have a certain experience, you want to reach enlightenment or you want to reach liberation. If we don't create the cause for it, it will not happen. It's not enough to wishing, we have to actually create the cause for this experience to come about, right? Or let's say, you want to fall in love and find your perfect partner, right? So this depends on certain causes, creating certain cause, right? So you want to become wealthy. So this doesn't become just by hard work. You have to create the cause through, for example, practicing generosity, right, and ethic. So all the even within cyclic existence, even all the positive experience, they depend on cause, on their appropriate causes, right? So once you understand how karma works, you know how to create the cause for the things you would like, even within cyclic existence, right? So for example, many people, they want to become wealthy, and the lamas didn't tell him to start a business. They told them to do 100,000 satsa of Ganapati, right? Which is one Buddha that brings wealth, right? So you see, there's other ways to create wealth than to go to work, right? So there's spiritual method that exists to produce wealth, right? So, yeah. And another way to produce wealth is to make offerings to the gurus, to the merit field, to pujas and things like that, right? So this is a way to create wealth too, right? It's by the practice of generosity and making offering, whether physical or mentally created. No? And then the negative imprint, it's not necessary that they're going to ripen, right? As long as they're on potential in our mind, as long as they haven't been activated by craving, grasping, and becoming, they can be purified, right? They can be burned so that they don't produce result. And that is done due to practice of purification, like the four opponent power, right? By taking refuge, bodhicitta, applying the regret, and then doing the uh, purification practice and the determination not to do that action again, so we can clean our mind. And there's another way. So when you become an arhat, you have still countless imprint of negative karma in your mind, but they cannot ripen because once there's no more ignorance, so as long when there's no more mental affliction, so karma cannot ripen anymore. So once your mind is cleaned from mental affliction, the karma cannot ripen anymore. So once there's no more craving and grasping in your mind, the karma cannot ripen anymore. So they need to be activated by craving and grasping. So if you realize emptiness, there's no more craving and grasping, so the karmic imprint cannot ripen anymore, right? So an arhat hasn't purified all his negative karma yet, but he's free. He's never gonna experience the consequences because he has no more craving, grasping, because he has no more ignorance. So if we look at it in terms of two lives, in one life, out of ignorance, you create karma that you leaves imprint in the mind, and then at the time of death, you further activate him to craving, grasping, and becoming, and then that produce next life, birth, uh, how to say, um, um, the consciousness, and then name and form, um, six sense base, and then six sense base, and there's birth, and then you have contact, feeling, um, and then at the end of life, craving, grasping, and then that leads to becoming, and then there's the next life, birth, old age, sickness, and death. So there's a way to look at it. In one life, you create all the causes, and in the other life, you experience all the results, right? So that's how one way of seeing over two lives. And there's another way to see over two lives where the projected cause are latent, so they are not activated, they are not actually manifest experience, they're just latent. And that's to make a distinction between the cause that are projected and the cause that are actualized. And then there's a way to look at it in terms of three lives, where there's a lot of lives that goes between the time that imprint are put in the consciousness, and then other karma ripens, and then after a number of life in between, that particular karma is activated to craving, grasping, and becoming, and then producing birth, old age, sickness, and death. I think one of the important meditation on that is to realize that while we experience the result of our past action, by, for example, now we have this life that is quite pleasant, so it's the ripening of some good karma. And then, so you have projecting karma and actualizing karma. So you have the karma that creates the rebirth, and then you have the karma that produce happy and unpleasant experience within that life, right? So we have some pleasant experience, we have some difficult experience, so within all being a human, right? So while we experience this result, every day we create new karma, right? We create a new set of 12 links. So in a day, we start many new sets of 12 links, right? So in a life, we start, thousands and thousands of new sets of 12 links. Right? So while experiencing the result of one, we create thousands of new, right? And then next life, we experience the result of one, and we create thousands new, right? So the circle is endless, right? So while experiencing the result, we create new set of 12 links uh, within cyclic existence, right? So in that sense, you can see there's no end. There's no end. While you experience something, you create new. That So I think this is the main teaching of the 12 link, is to realize that it's created by your mind, believing in inherent existence, and because of that you create karma, and that karma stays on the mind till it is activated by craving, grasping at the end of one's life, and that all the feelings we experience is produced by this imprint, this karma, and that while you experience the result, you create a lot of new karma, right? So there's no end. You can never reach the end of having finished all the karma, or never reach the end of the process of rebirth, right? So an endless chain. No? So normally, if you want to reflect on that, how to stop it, you say, if I want to stop aging and death, I have to stop birth under the control of karma and illusion. In order to stop that, I have to stop becoming. In order to stop that, I have to stop grasping. In order to stop that, I have to stop craving. And you got all the way back to the first thing. If I want to stop all this chain reaction, I have to stop the ignorance, which is the first link, right? So if we remove the ignorance, then we free from this chain of reaction. So there's no other way to become free, but so in certain tradition, they speak about, okay, you can create the imprint, but as long as you don't activate them by craving and grasping, they don't turn into a rebirth, right? So they pay very much attention to whatever sensation they have, whether pleasant and unpleasant. So not to have not crave for the positive experience and have no aversion to the negative one, right? So try to stay neutral. I think in certain Theravada circle, you put a lot of emphasis in order to not nourish, you know, uh, yeah, not create attachment to the pleasurable sensation and no aversion to the unpleasant one. To yeah, to have no craving and grasping so as not to activate karma, right? You can see that, like activating karma, but you can also see it in the terms of creating new karma, right? So each time we have a sensation and we look for something pleasurable, that we create a new karma, right? A new, yeah, out of ignorance, seeing it as inherently existent. So we create this karma of wanting this and that, right? So we create a new circle of 12 links that puts an imprint on the mind, and then like that we nourish it. So when we speak about karma, there's another category, is the throwing karma and the completing karma. You might have heard that, right? So a throwing karma is a complete karma that can produce a rebirth, right? Then the completing karma are not strong enough to produce a rebirth. They create the pleasure and pain within a life, but they don't create a life, right? They just create the circumstance within a life. So to be a throwing karma, it has to have the three things complete: the motivation, the action, and then the rejoicing. So if one of these three is missing, then it's not a complete karma, and then it produces the result within a life, right? So in that sense, it's important when you do a positive action at the end to rejoice, to be happy, and to dedicate, right? Because if you don't do that, then it might not lead to actually a good rebirth, right? So to feel happy when you do something positive, to rejoice in having been generous, of having helped someone, to rejoice, to feel happy at the end, you know. So if you regret, for example, you're generous and I say, oh, I shouldn't have given that much, you generate regret in having done the action. So then the action is not complete, right? Or let's say, you do something negative and at the end you regret. So the stronger the regret you have, then it doesn't produce a low rebirth because you didn't rejoice, you harmed somebody, but y- at the end you regret. So it's important when we do negative action actually to regret it because then it doesn't become that heavy to produce a rebirth, right? And then the motivation. So Geshe Zopa says, actually all our actions, even all our positive actions, they're all tainted by selfishness. It's very sobering, you know, you know, uh, even your most uh, selfless, what you think selfless action, you know, that you really do it for other. He says it's always tainted with a certain subtle level of selfishness, a certain level of satisfaction that you look in doing that, even that virtuous action, you know. There's always, he says, and that's going to be like that till the pass of seeing, till you reach a direct experience of emptiness. All our virtuous action will be tainted by this subtle selfishness, right? So it's actually very difficult to do an action completely pure, you know, completely selfless, you know, because the sense of I, the sense is there, right? So even if we think it is subliminal, you know, it's still there, right? So it's only when you have completely eliminated the sense of I, the inherent I, completely by direct experience of end, it's only after that that your action will become really selfless. He says before that is always a subtle sense of I and mine. No? Yeah, any questions then? Yeah.
So, regarding the positive karma that you just mentioned, are you saying that if you don't rejoice, I didn't get that part. Like, if you don't rejoice, then what happens? It's
It does,
gone.
no, it's not gone. No, it's not a complete action. It's not complete. In the sense, it doesn't have the motive. You see, uh, if you do an act of generosity, it is motivated by love and compassion, right? Then you actually make the uh, gift of whatever, you know. So gift in Buddhism is not our Western understanding of gift, right? So when we speak of gift in Buddhism, it has four types of gift. You have the materials, but then you also have protection, you know. Then you have love, and then the teaching, yeah, yeah, and then spiritual advice, right? So you have four types of gift, right? So any of these four types of gift, so giving love, you know, it's a form of gift, right? You know, you go to visit your old mom, you know, you help your child or you help your neighbor out of love, right? So that's a gift, you know, it's the gift of love, right? And then if you uh, protect an insect that is gonna being driven over by a car, you take it away from the road. So that's the giving gift of protection. Or a child is about to jump on the street in front of a car, you take the, you know, so you protect the child, or you protect from sickness or from harm. So this is the gift of protection, right? And then spiritual advice doesn't mean you sit on a throne and you give teachings, right? It can be help you, your child or your neighbor. You give them some wise words of wisdom, we would say now in Western language. You just help them, you know, with something spiritually meaningful, right? Or something that reduce their anxiety or their fear. So that's gift of Dharma, right? In that sense. So any of these positive action one does, if one doesn't rejoice or feel happy about it, so it doesn't become a complete action that is capable of producing a rebirth, but it still brings about positive result within a life, but it doesn't project into it doesn't is not powerful enough to produce a rebirth, right? But it's still positive.
So Venerable Renee, then say if I do something good, but I remember 3 years later, and then I want to, or late that night, or because I never remember to dedicate, I
Yeah.
never remember to rejoice in the moment. So is it lost? I mean, is it weaker? Does it count to rejoice later? Or oh, okay, sorry. She just
No,
asked.
no, 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 no. It's okay.
3 years difference. I guess I was thinking about my question while you were.
No, but I think if you rejoice later, right, 3 years later, so then that's the craving and grasping that brings it to accomplishment, right? So that's nourishing that seed, right? That's watering that seed. So actually it's good. For example, in the practice of rejoicing, it encourages us to rejoice in the positive things we do, often. Lama Zopa Rinpoche was really much encouraging us to rejoice in the good things we do. Each time you rejoice of having done something positive, you double its positive potential, right? So it's actually better, you create more positive energy by rejoicing in the things you did in the past than in doing them again now, right? It takes less effort, less time. You just rejoice in all the retreats you have done, you know, you create more positive energy than actually doing a new retreat. If you think about less effort, right? Yet, you see, because you nourish that seed again, and you make it stronger, right? So I think rejoicing is really an important practice. So not only at the end of the action, because it makes it a complete action, but anytime you rejoice in something positive you have done, is fantastic. So especially, when one gets older in life, one has done a lot of things. So one should rejoice, in one's good life one has had. And, if one has done positive things, there's a lot of things to rejoice about. And it's fantastic. Yeah. It makes the mind happy, and it makes that karmic imprint very strong. And then when you die, because you have nourished that positive thing, then it brings about a good rebirth, right?
Okay. And that would just be just saying, I'm happy I did that, or
You don't even need to say it. You just need to think it. Oh, that was good. I did that. Oh, that's nice. You feel happy, having done this and that, right? You just feel happy about remembering something positive you have done, and you feel happy about it. Yeah. And then if you remember something opposite, if you remember something negative you have done, each time you generate regret. So each time you make that karmic imprint weaker, right? So each time you remember something negative or unskillful you did, you regret, So like that imprint becomes weaker, right? So you see there's a lot of, once you know how it works, you have a lot of freedom or a lot of possibility to make the positive stronger and the negative weaker. So you have a lot of tool to improve one's situation. Like it says in the teachings, the person that doesn't know, he doesn't create lots of negative karma, but after some time they become very heavy. Whereas the skillful person, he creates quite a lot of negative karma, but because he's skillful, they become very weak, very light. Right? Because if you know how it works, you can decrease the weight of the negative and you can enhance the positive. Whereas if you don't know, you just go about and they get heavy over time, right? Because that's how karma works, right? It says if you kill an insect after 21 days, as heavy as having killed a human, right? Because karma multiplies, right? Becomes so. Even though one doesn't create a lot of negative action, if one don't purify, if one doesn't regret, that karma increases, right? So yeah, so a normal person hasn't done really something really heavy, negative, but due to the passage of time, these small little karma, they accumulate, right? Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Venerable. I was thinking where you're talking that basically all non-contaminated actions are general I. So in our level, if we're doing a good action, is it better to do it with the inherent I? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because then you rejoice and then you get the good karma on that. Whereas if you do a deed that you don't really care about, but you know it's a good deed, that is that less merit? Oh, okay, sorry.
I think before having realized emptiness, all our karma are created under the control of believing in inherent existence, right? But it's true if you have not a strong sense of I, when you do the action, I don't know. I wonder with the general I whether you can have a positive motivation. You know, it seems that if you do a positive action, there has to be an I that does the positive action. That has to be quite strong, right? So yeah. So I think the inherent I would be there. I don't think the general I is a very weak sense of I. So I don't think the general I would create a strong positive karma. Right? Yeah. So maybe last one. Huh? We can continue tomorrow. Last one, you can.
When we did the the ember burning, what's producing the heat?
What's producing the heat? Your mind.
Then what's burning? What makes it hot?
Your mind. What else?
Your mind will make your body hot.
Yes. I mean, it's not matches, right? No lighter, so it's your mind. Yes. Right. Okay. So whatever positive action, merit or positive energy we create this afternoon by reflecting refuge on bodhicitta, on karma abiding, and on the 12 links. So whatever positive energy we generate, we offer for us to get those realization as quickly as possible. And may all sentient beings also get the realization of taking refuge, generating bodhicitta, developing calm abiding, and then focusing on emptiness, and thereby becoming free from cycle existence and quickly reach enlightenment because of our merit. And then if we have relatives that are sick, that are dying, or which have passed away, or people which are suffering, so because of our karmic connection, we have more, our prayers are more potent for them. So we offer them our positive energy so that they get healed and they get a good rebirth. And whatever problem they have, may they be free from them. And may all our spiritual teacher, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, Khensu Rinpoche Losang Jompa, and all other teachers that are still alive, may they have long life and good health. And may Lama Zopsa Rinpoche, our precious teacher, quickly come back. May he be recognized, and may His Holiness Dalai Lama give him the condition for good education, and may he quickly become again a qualified teacher and help many, many living beings again. And may the visit of His Holiness Ling Rinpoche be successful in the Bay Area. So may many people get inspired and enter the path to liberation under his guidance. And may center like Ocean of Compassion, Vajrapani, Land of Metsil Buddha, and Sechening flourish. May they be supported and may they lead many beings on the path to enlightenment. Thank you very much. Good evening.